When the soul begins to rise, the first tremor you feel is not peace, but a kind of panic, a disturbance that rattles the walls of the personality you have so carefully built. You may think something is wrong, that you are losing your balance, but in truth, this is the first sign that something far greater is breaking through the surface. The ego, that small yet insistent voice that believes it is the center of your being, feels the movement of the soul like an earthquake beneath its feet. The ego is not evil, it is necessary. It is the mask that allows you to navigate the world of forms and rules, to speak a language that others can understand. But the soul is the ocean beneath the mask, the current that refuses to be contained by the smallness of everyday roles and expectations. When that current swells, the ego clings to its familiar shore, terrified of being swept into the unknown. The process of transformation, the kind I have spent my life observing and guiding, is never gentle at first. It begins with a confrontation, often hidden in the symbols of dreams, in the strange emotions that rise uninvited, in the unease that whispers, this life you are living is not the whole of you. You may try to ignore it, to silence it with the noise of work, relationships, and distractions. But the soul waits patiently. It will appear in your shadows, in the very things you reject or fear in others. What you deny in the outer world is often a reflection of what you have exiled within yourself. This is why, when the soul rises, it feels as if the world conspires to show you all that is unresolved inside you. I want you to understand something. Vital transformation is not an act of willpower or moral effort. It is not about improving your ego or becoming a better version of the persona you wear. It is about dismantling the false walls that keep you separated from your deeper nature. This dismantling can feel like death. The ego, with its patterns and defenses, resists what it perceives as annihilation. It panics because the rising of the soul is a call to surrender, to allow the unknown to guide you. And the ego does not trust what it cannot control. Many of you have felt this panic in subtle ways. Perhaps you have found yourself inexplicably irritable, restless, or overwhelmed by emotions that seem to come from nowhere. Or you have dreams that haunt you, filled with strange archetypes. An old wise figure, a threatening shadow, a wild animal that seems both dangerous and sacred. These images are not random, they are the language of the soul, speaking to you through symbols that the conscious mind cannot fully grasp. I have said before that the unconscious is not just a repository of forgotten memories, it is the very matrix of the self, the totality of who you are. And when the self calls you to transformation, you will feel it as a crisis, a moment of friction between who you think you are and who you are meant to become. The ego panics because it senses its own limitations. It is like a king who has ruled a small territory for so long that it cannot imagine a kingdom larger than its borders. When the soul rises, it is as if the horizon expands infinitely, and the king fears it will lose its throne. But the truth is that the ego is not meant to be destroyed, it is meant to serve. The goal of transformation is not to erase the ego, but to align it with the deeper wisdom of the self, to allow it to become a vessel rather than a tyrant. Think of the chrysalis that holds the caterpillar as it transforms into a butterfly. The shell must crack, the form must dissolve into a state of formlessness before something new can emerge. The ego experiences this phase as chaos, as an unraveling of its known identity. It will whisper to you, go back to what you know. This path is too uncertain, too dangerous, but the soul is relentless in its invitation. It is like the pull of the tide. No matter how you resist, you are drawn to the deeper waters. In my work with patients, I have often seen how the first signs of transformation appear as symptoms, anxiety, depression, confusion, even physical illness, but these are not signs of weakness. They are signals that the psyche is demanding attention, that something in the unconscious is pushing to be integrated. You cannot heal what you refuse to see. The shadows, you fear your anger, your relasi. Your wounds are not obstacles but gateways. They are the very places where the soul's energy has been trapped, waiting for your conscious recognition. When you allow yourself to face these shadows, something extraordinary happens. You begin to see that what you call darkness is not evil, but simply unlived life. The archetype of the shadow is like a mirror, showing you the parts of yourself that you have denied or projected onto others. The ego fears this confrontation because it means admitting that you are not the perfect persona you present to the world. Yet, in this humility, you find freedom. You begin to reclaim the energy that has been locked away. And with it comes a surge of vitality, creativity, and clarity. The soul rises in waves, not all at once. There are moments of illumination, dreams that feel like revelations, sudden insights that break through your confusion like light through clouds. But there are also valleys, times when you feel lost or empty, when the old ways no longer work, but the new path has not yet fully appeared. This is the liminal space, the threshold where true transformation occurs. It is here that the ego panics the most, because it cannot rely on its usual strategies. It is forced to let go. I have learned that the key to surviving this stage is to cultivate a relationship with the unconscious, to listen to the symbols and images that arise rather than dismiss them. Dreams, fantasies, synchronicities, these are the whispers of the self, guiding you toward integration. Pay attention to them. Do not interpret them too quickly with logic, but allow them to speak in their own language. A dream of a snake may terrify the ego, but to the soul, it is the ancient symbol of transformation, of shedding old skin. A dream of descending into a dark cave may feel like a nightmare, but it often signifies a journey into the depths of the unconscious, where hidden treasures await. The panic of the ego is not your enemy. It is a sign that you are on the right path. It means you are stepping beyond the familiar boundaries of your identity and entering the realm of the unknown. And it is only in the unknown that true growth is possible. You cannot transform while clinging to the safety of the old self. You must risk the death of what you have been in order to become what you truly are. Even as I speak these words, I feel the weight of their truth pressing against the limits of language. Transformation is not a concept to be understood intellectually. It is an experience that must be lived. It is the burning away of illusions, the breaking open of the heart, the awakening of a deeper knowing that cannot be taught but only remembered. This is why the soul's rising is both terrifying and liberating. It strips you bare, but in that nakedness, you discover your real strength. When the soul calls you into its domain, it does so with a voice that is not always gentle. Sometimes it is a whisper, but other times it is a storm, a force that shakes the structures of your life until you can no longer ignore the truth. You may lose interest in the things that once consumed you. You may feel detached, as if the roles you once played no longer fit. This is the ego's panic, its fear of irrelevance. It clings to its old patterns like a mask fused to the skin. But the rising of the soul demands that this mask be broken. The ego does not understand the language of depth. It measures success by outer standards, approval, achievement, reputation. The soul measures by wholeness, by alignment with the truth of your being. This is why, during transformation, the things that once gave you satisfaction may feel hollow. You may stand in a room filled with people and feel profoundly alone, not because you are unloved, but because you are awakening to the realization that you have been living on the surface of your own life. The soul pulls you inward into the caves of your own psyche, where you must face the archetypes that govern your unconscious. Among these archetypes is the shadow, the dark twin of your persona. It is everything you have repressed, everything you have deemed unacceptable, everything you would rather not see. When the soul rises, it does not come as a pure light detached from darkness. It comes through the very shadows you have buried. You may dream of chasing or being chased, of dark figures or wild animals. You may project your shadow onto others, judging in them what you secretly fear in yourself. But if you have the courage to face this shadow, to see that it is not a monster but a teacher, you will discover a profound release of energy. The shadow holds not just your fears, but your forgotten gifts, your capacity for passion, for power, for creativity that was once exiled. I have observed this in countless individuals. A man who suppressed his anger his whole life begins to dream of fire and serpents. He believes something evil is stirring, but in truth, the fire is his own vitality, demanding expression. A woman who has lived in constant service to others begins to feel waves of resentment and despair. She believes she is failing as a caretaker. But these feelings are the soul's way of telling her that she must claim her own life, that love must include herself. The ego panics because it sees only the collapse of the old identity, not the birth of a deeper one. Transformation is never linear. You will have moments of clarity where everything seems illuminated, followed by times of confusion where nothing makes sense. The ego will use these valleys to convince you to retreat, to return to the safety of old patterns. But do not be deceived. Just as the alchemist knows that lead must be subjected to fire to yield gold, you too must pass through the heat of your own unconscious. The process is often called individuation, the becoming of the self. It is not about becoming perfect, but about integrating all that you are, light and shadow alike, so that you no longer live divided. You will notice certain signs. When this process deepens, synchronicities begin to appear, meaningful coincidences that seem to guide you. You might think of an old friend and they suddenly call. You may dream of a symbol, a white bird, a closed door, and find that the next day something in your life mirrors that image. These are not accidents. The psyche speaks in symbols, and when the soul rises, the boundary between inner and outer reality becomes thin. Pay attention to these signs. They are like breadcrumbs left by the self, guiding you through the dark forest. The ego finds this unsettling. It prefers a world of clear cause and effect, of predictable outcomes, but transformation is not predictable. It is a dance with mystery, a descent into what I have called the collective unconscious, the vast field of archetypes and mythic patterns that shape every human life. In this realm, you are not just an isolated individual. You are part of a much larger story. The myths of the hero, the mother, the trickster, the wise old man, these are not relics of ancient cultures. They are living energies present in your own psyche, waiting to be recognized. Imagine for a moment that you are in a dream where you are standing at the edge of a great river. The water is dark and deep, and you are afraid to step in. The ego tells you to stay on the shore where it is safe, but something in the water calls to you. It is the soul inviting you to enter, to surrender to a current greater than yourself. If you have the courage to step in, you will find that the river does not drown you, it carries you. But to trust this current, you must let go of the shore. In your waking life, this letting go might look like facing a truth you have avoided, ending a relationship that no longer aligns with your being, or pursuing a calling that makes no logical sense but feels profoundly right. These moments of choice are crucibles. They test whether you will listen to the soul or to the fear-driven voice of the ego. I have seen people who, at the threshold of transformation, retreat into their old patterns. They numb themselves, distract themselves, and then wonder why life feels meaningless. The soul will not punish you, but it will wait. It is patient, but it is also insistent. The call will come again, often louder than before. One of the greatest challenges in this process is the fear of uncertainty. The ego thrives on certainty, on knowing who it is and where it is going. The soul, however, is not concerned with such definitions. It moves in rhythms and symbols, in moments of grace and disruption. When you are in the midst of transformation, you may feel as though you are losing everything, your old identity, your old dreams. But this loss is not a failure. It is the opening through which the self can emerge. What is essential will remain, and what is false will fall away. Do not mistake the soul's rising for a purely mystical experience detached from the body or the world. On the contrary, it is profoundly embodied. You may feel it in your chest, as if something is expanding and breaking through You may feel waves of emotion, as if the very cells of your being are shedding old stories. The body is not separate from the psyche, it is the vessel through which transformation manifests. Pay attention to its signals. A sudden illness, fatigue, or burst of energy can all be signs of deeper shifts within. The ego will resist these sensations. It will try to interpret them as problems to be fixed. But if you can hold them with curiosity, you will begin to see their meaning. For example, a recurring pain might point to a place where you have carried unspoken grief. A sudden restlessness might be the soul's way of telling you that your life has outgrown its old container. These are not just physical or emotional events, they are messages. As the soul rises, you begin to see how the patterns of your life have been shaped not only by personal choices, but by forces far deeper than you imagined. The collective unconscious, with its immense reservoir of archetypes, has been quietly guiding you, sometimes in harmony, sometimes in conflict with your conscious will. When transformation begins, you may feel as though you are being drawn into a narrative you did not choose, yet one that feels strangely familiar, as if you are stepping into a story that was waiting for you all along. This is not a sign of losing control, but of discovering the true current beneath the surface of your life. The ego, which has long believed itself to be the author of your destiny, resists this realization. It whispers that you are losing yourself, that surrendering to the unknown is dangerous. But what the ego calls danger is often the soul's invitation to depth. You cannot enter this deeper life without passing through thresholds of fear. It is as if the psyche itself has placed guardians at the gates of transformation. Your doubts, your anxieties, your old wounds, all standing in your path like figures in a dream. But these figures are not here to destroy you. They are tests, symbols that ask, are you ready to see yourself fully? Are you willing to let go of what is false? Dreams become especially important in these times. The unconscious speaks most clearly in dreams, and during moments of transformation, they often take on a vivid, almost mythic quality. You might dream of descending into a cave or an underground temple, which signifies a journey into the depths of your psyche, or you may dream of death and rebirth, of burning or drowning, symbols of the ego's dissolution and the emergence of a larger self. Pay close attention to these images. They are not random. They are the blueprint of your transformation. The ego may dismiss them as meaningless, but the soul knows they carry the keys to your next stage of being. One of the most difficult aspects of this process is the loneliness it often brings. When the soul rises, you may find that the people around you no longer understand you as they once did. Your conversations might feel shallow, your old social circles less satisfying. This is not because you are superior or because others have failed you, but because you are moving into a different layer of reality, one that cannot be fully expressed in casual words. The journey of individuation is, in many ways, a solitary path, but do not let this solitude become isolation. There are others who walk this road, even if they are not immediately visible. books, myths, and even certain moments of silence can become companions on this path. The ego fears solitude because it thrives on external validation. It wants to be seen, praised, acknowledged, but the soul is not concerned with appearances. It asks you to face yourself in the quiet, to confront the parts of you that emerge when no one is watching. It is in these moments when you are alone, stripped of distraction, that you begin to hear the deeper voice of the self. This voice is not loud or demanding. It is like a soft current, an intuition that moves through your body and thoughts, guiding you gently but firmly. As this voice grows stronger, the ego often reacts by creating resistance. You may feel sudden waves of self-doubt, as if everything you have achieved is meaningless. You might find yourself clinging to old habits, even destructive ones, because they give you a sense of control. But these are the ego's last attempts to keep you small. Do not fight the ego with anger or force. Instead, meet it with awareness. The ego is like a frightened child. What it needs is not to be destroyed, but to be reassured, integrated, and given a new role in service of the self. The self is not a distant ideal or a mystical abstraction. It is the totality of who you are, conscious and unconscious, light and shadow, body and spirit. When you begin to live from this deeper center, your life no longer feels fragmented. Even the painful moments become meaningful because you see them as part of the larger pattern. This is what I have often called the process of becoming whole. It is not about perfection, but about harmony between the many parts of your being. There is a point in every true transformation where you must face what I call the night sea journey. It is the dark passage where the old self dissolves and you feel as if you are adrift without direction. The ego despairs in this place because it cannot see the way forward. But the soul understands that this is the necessary phase of death before rebirth. Like the myth of Osiris, who was dismembered before being reassembled, or the story of Inanna's descent into the underworld, you too must face the disintegration of what is no longer needed so that something new can emerge. This phase is not permanent, though it may feel endless. The key is to trust that there is a larger intelligence at work, a rhythm that carries you, even when your conscious mind is lost. Archetypes often arise in dreams or fantasies during this phase, guiding you through the darkness. You may encounter the wise old man or woman, a figure that represents the deeper wisdom of the psyche. Or you may face a trickster who disrupts your plans and forces you to see where you have been clinging to illusions. These figures are not external beings, but living patterns within you. By engaging with them through reflection, journaling, or simply paying attention, you begin to integrate their lessons. The ego panics in the presence of these archetypes because they remind it that it is not the ultimate authority. But once you see that the ego is just one part of a larger system, you begin to feel a liberation that cannot be found in the superficial pursuits of power or approval. You start to sense that life itself is an unfolding mystery, a dialogue between your conscious self and the vast intelligence of the unconscious. It is important to remember that transformation is not about rejecting the world or retreating from life. On the contrary, as the soul rises, you often become more fully engaged with the world, but in a different way. You are no longer driven by the frantic need to prove yourself, to chase validation. Instead, you act from a place of inner alignment. Your work, your relationships, your creativity all become expressions of the deeper self. You begin to see life not as a series of tasks to be completed, but as a living symbol, a canvas on which the psyche paints its mythic story. At times, this shift can feel disorienting. You may look back at your old self and barely recognize who you were. The ego grieves this loss, even as the soul celebrates the growth. It is important to allow this grief, to honor the parts of yourself that are passing away. Transformation is not about violence against the self, but about a gentle, albeit relentless unfolding. Just as the snake sheds its skin, you must release what no longer serves you. Even if that skin once protected you, the rising of the soul often brings a heightened sensitivity. You may feel emotions more deeply, sense the moods of others, or even feel attuned to the collective suffering of the world. This sensitivity is not a weakness. It is a sign that your consciousness is expanding beyond the narrow confines of the ego. However, il requiert discernement. Without boundaries, you can become overwhelmed by this flood of impressions. This is where the ego, now transformed from a tyrant to a servant, plays a vital role. It helps you navigate the external world, maintaining a balance between openness and protection. In this way, the ego and the soul are not enemies but partners. The ego builds the vessel, the structure, while the soul fills it with meaning. When they are aligned, your life becomes a bridge between the inner and outer worlds. You begin to live with a sense of authenticity that radiates from within, unaffected by the shifting opinions of others. When the soul rises to its full presence, you begin to feel an unshakable truth. Your life is not random, nor is it defined solely by the circumstances into which you were born. Beneath the surface of every event, every wound, and every dream, there is a hidden order, a symbolic thread that connects you to the vast field of the collective unconscious. This is why transformation often feels like both a collapse and a revelation. It is the collapse of illusions that once sustained you, and the revelation of a deeper reality that was always there, waiting for your recognition. The ego will resist this reality until the very end. It thrives on the known, the predictable, the controllable. It does not want to admit that there is something within you, this vast self, that holds more wisdom than all its clever strategies. Yet, the moment you allow yourself to listen, truly listen to the soul's voice, you feel a resonance that the ego cannot replicate. It is not the voice of fear or ambition. It is the voice that whispers of purpose, of meaning, that transcends your personal story and touches something universal. To heed this voice is to awaken. This awakening, however, is not a single event. It is a continuous process. Like the turning of seasons, teams, the soul arises with the energy of spring, bringing bursts of insight and clarity. At other times, it is like winter silent, cold, a time of waiting and gestation. Do not despair when the winter seasons come. The ego panics when it feels that the warmth of inspiration is gone, but the soul knows that these quiet periods are necessary. They are the dark soil in which new growth takes root. Without them, no true transformation can endure. One of the signs that you are entering the deeper phases of this journey is a shift in how you perceive suffering. The ego sees suffering as a punishment or a failure, something to be avoided at all costs. But the soul sees suffering as an initiation, a passage through which you are stripped of false attachments and brought closer to your essence. I have often said that there is no coming to consciousness without pain. This does not mean that you must seek suffering, but rather that when it comes, as it inevitably does, you meet it with openness. You ask, what is this trying to show me? What part of me is being called to awaken? In many of my analyses, I have witnessed how the psyche uses suffering as a way to speak when all other signals have been ignored. A recurring illness, a failed relationship, a sense of emptiness. These are not meaningless accidents, but messages. They are the psyche's way of saying, you have strayed from your true path. It is time to return. When you learn to read these messages, they no longer appear as cruel punishments, but as guides, however harsh, leading you back to wholeness. Another sign of transformation is the emergence of synchronicity. These are the moments when inner events, dreams, thoughts, intuitions coincide with outer events in a way that defies mere chance. They are like cracks in the wall between the inner and outer worlds. Moments when you glimpse the underlying unity of all things. The ego dismisses these as coincidences, but the soul recognizes them as confirmation that it is on the right path. Synchronicities are invitations to trust the unseen order that moves through your life. The more you align with the soul, the less you feel the need to control every outcome. You begin to trust the unfolding even when it does not match your expectations. This trust is not passive resignation, it is an active surrender, a willingness to collaborate with the deeper intelligence of life. From this place, you no longer chase meaning in frantic ways. You begin to see that meaning is not something you create, but something you uncover. Like a sculpture hidden in stone, the ego, however, continues to panic in subtle ways. It might tell you that you are losing your ambition, that you are becoming too detached. But what is truly happening is a shift in orientation. Your energy is no longer wasted on proving your worth to a world that cannot define you. Instead, it flows into the creation of something, authentic relationships, art, work, or simply a way of being that reflects your deepest truth. This authenticity is magnetic. People sense it even if they cannot explain it, because it carries the power of someone who is aligned with their inner self. This alignment also brings with it an awareness of death, not as a morbid fear, but as a profound teacher. The ego is terrified of death because it clings to form, to identity. The soul, however, understands that death is not the end, but a transformation, a return to the greater whole. When you truly grasp this, life itself becomes richer. Every moment becomes precious, not because it is fleeting, but because it is part of an eternal cycle. You begin to live not out of fear, but out of reverence for the mystery that holds you. There is a moment, often subtler, when the ego stops panicking and begins to listen. It realizes that the soul is not here to destroy it, but to elevate it. In this moment, a new harmony emerges. You begin to act in the world with clarity, not because you have conquered fear, but because you have learned to walk alongside it. Fear becomes a signal, not a master. Doubt becomes a doorway to deeper inquiry, rather than a barrier. The journey of transformation is not without its paradoxes. As you become more whole, you may also feel more acutely the suffering of the world. Your heart opens, and with it comes the awareness of pain that you once blocked out. This sensitivity can feel overwhelming, but it is also a sign of strength. The ego believes that to protect itself, it must close off. But the soul teaches you that true strength is in remaining open, even in the face of suffering. It is this openness that allows you to become a vessel of healing, not only for yourself, but for others. Do not mistake this for a burden you must carry alone. The collective unconscious holds not only the weight of humanity's wounds, but also its wisdom. When you connect with the soul, you tap into a reservoir of resilience and creativity that goes beyond your personal story. It is as if the archetypes themselves, the healer, the hero, the sage, begin to lend you their strength. You become part of something larger, a timeless pattern that transcends the limits of your individual life. As we reach the end of this exploration, I want you to understand that transformation is not a destination, but a way of being. The soul rises, not once, but again and again, each time calling you to greater depth, greater authenticity. The ego will panic at times, but this panic is not the end of the story. It is the sign that you are moving beyond the old boundaries of who you thought you were. Each wave of transformation brings you closer to the self, the eternal center that holds all contradictions, all mysteries in balance. If you find yourself in the midst of this process confused, frightened, uncertain, know that you are not lost. You are being initiated into the deeper truth of your existence. Trust the dreams that come to you, the symbols that arise, the quiet voice within that says, keep going. This voice is not the ego's chatter, but the soul's wisdom. It will never mislead you. In the end, when the ego learns to bow before the soul, something extraordinary happens. Life, which once felt fragmented and chaotic, begins to reveal its hidden pattern. You realize that every shadow, every wound, every fear was not a mistake, but part of the alchemical process of becoming who you truly are. You are not here to perfect the mask, but to awaken the self that shines through it. And when you leave from this place, you are no longer at war with life. you become a participant in its great unfolding, a co-creator with a mystery that has always been guiding you